This is Demon Marked, Book 1 of the Venandi Chronicles, an urban paranormal romance series. Written by Sara Snow. Narrated by Selena Salcido and Henry Shader for Hot Ghost Productions. Chapter 19. Georgia. My trip to the emergency room after the car crash was interesting, to say the least. The paramedics and nurses handled me like a shattered porcelain doll. But to the ER doctor's amazement, my x-rays showed that all of my bones were intact. "That's impossible," he kept saying, shaking his head as he studied the films. "You had 2 compound fractures, one in your left humerus and the other in your right tibia. Your right hand was smashed when you flew out of the car. Every bone in that hand should have been pulverized." He stared at me with a combination of wonder and dread. "Are you sure you're human?" I smiled. "I'm pretty sure I'm not." "I do want to order a CT scan of your head, just to make sure you don't have any intracranial injuries. But honestly, I don't know why I'm keeping you here. You should be bruised, lacerated, and fractured, and you should be in shock from the blood loss. But your vitals are stable, and your labs are normal." After what I just went through with the succubus, I didn't think anything could send me into shock anymore. "Can I go then?" "As soon as we run the CT and get the results back, you could be discharged. There's a man outside waiting to see you. Looks like he might be your dad." "I don't have a dad." "Well, he looks like the father type. Want me to have him come in?" I nodded. The triage nurse led Kingston into my room. He rushed to me and engulfed me in his arms. That hug felt like being wrapped in a pair of angel wings. "Georgia, how are you doing?" He sat back and held me at arm's length. "Just as I thought. You don't have a scratch on you. Your hair's a bit mused, but that's nothing a comb and brush won't fix." He laughed. "The x-rays don't show any broken bones," I said. "I know I heal fast. I walked out of the hospital days after waking from a coma. I can cut myself with a knife and watch my skin seal itself shut. But this is insane. I was thrown from that car. I went flying through the air and landed on the asphalt at high speed. I shouldn't even be alive, much less sitting here in an ugly hospital gown waiting to be discharged." "You have extraordinary powers," Kingston agreed. "You caused that car accident, didn't you?" It was the only way I could think of to get out of that nightmare. But where did those powers come from? That's what I don't understand. They definitely didn't come from my mom. The only powers she had were the abilities to shoot up, get high, and pass out. "For now, let's just be grateful that you have them." Kingston patted my arm. His tone was a bit on the condescending side, but I didn't mind. The warmth of his presence, of his goodness, made me feel safe. I hadn't felt safe in a very long time. The ER doctor discharged me, but not before asking if I would agree to be the subject of a study. "This could make my career," he said. "I can just imagine the possibilities. I'd be offered a directorship, honorary degrees, speaking tours. There's just no record of any human being ever healing so quickly." "This young lady has more important things to do than make you rich and famous, Doctor." Kingston put his arm around my shoulders and led me out of the ER. "Would you mind giving me a ride back to my apartment?" I asked the older man. "I don't have my car, and even if I did, the idea of driving right now freaks me out."
"I absolutely do mind. You will not be going back to your apartment until you fully recovered from this experience."
"But my computer with my school assignments on it is there. And I need to get to work tomorrow morning. And all my clothes are there too. I can't afford to lose that job, Kingston. It's shitty work, but I need the money."
"I'll call your company tomorrow and let them know you had an accident, and that you need a few days to get back on your feet. If you don't have sick time, I will compensate you. I don't want you back in that apartment anytime soon."
I opened my mouth to protest, but he closed my lips with his finger.
"This isn't just about your health or recovering from the accident,"
Kingston said.
"It's about protecting your soul. The succubus we destroyed last night was the mate of a very powerful incubus. That accident stirred up a whole hornet's nest of demons. They're going to be pursuing you. You aren't safe alone tonight, if ever."
My heart sank. My life as a call center slave did suck, but it was a life I'd built through my own choices. I had no plans to stay in that gig any longer than I had to. I was going to pull myself out of the cubicle monkey zoo and become a healthcare professional who could afford a car that didn't break down and an apartment that didn't reek of stale cigarette smoke. So, what should I do? Go back to the warehouse with you?
"Yes, that's the plan. You'll come back to the warehouse, rest for a day or two, and then resume your training. Olympia is all ready to fuss over you. She'll be thrilled to have you back."
My life, such as it was, seemed to be out of my hands now. I let Kingston take me to his car, a black sedan that looked like a Secret Service vehicle. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Then I asked the question that had been on my mind since I regained consciousness in the ER. "Did Carter make it out of that mess okay?"
"He did indeed. Carter is fine. Worried sick about you. But otherwise, he is completely well. No injuries, other than the blow to his conscience. He feels responsible for what happened to you. As well he should. You're a slayer in training. He should never have left your side."
But our plan was for him to sit alone so that the succubus would hit on him, I explained. That's the only reason he left me. I was supposed to keep my eye on Carter and stay sober. I got at least one of those right. We pulled into a covered garage behind the warehouse. Kingston helped me out of the car. I tried to stand, but a muscle spasm in my lower back stopped me cold. I winced in pain. With each step I took, my back and knees throbbed. "Ow! I guess I'm not fully recovered as I thought," I said. Suddenly, it didn't seem like such a bad idea for me to stay with the Venandi. If that incubus sent his supernatural thugs after me, or if, God forbid, he came to find me himself, I wouldn't be able to run very far if I was paralyzed with pain. Olympia met us at the front door of the warehouse. "Georgia! What on earth have you been up to tonight?" she cried, squeezing me in a powerful hug. I couldn't help yelping. She was much stronger than I thought. "Oh, I was just out getting drunk with the succubus. She kidnapped me from the bar and threatened to kill me in the grisliest possible manner with the help of her incubus boyfriend. All I had to do was wreck her car and break half the bones in my body to free myself. You know, just another wild Saturday night for a college kid. Sowing your wild oats, aren't you, sweetie? Come with me. I'm going to draw you a hot bath and make you a pot of my muscle-repairing tea. I can tell you're in pain. You're hobbling around like old Mother Hubbard.
Olympia will take excellent care of you,
Kingston said.
I'm going to bed. Don't let Olympia keep you up all night gossiping. You need your rest.
Olympia took me upstairs, where she already had a warm bath waiting for me. The tub was encircled by scented candles, and the water foamed with bubbles. A set of white towels and a white bathrobe hung on a rack beside the tub. The pot of tea she had promised sat steeping on a table beside the sink. Tears stung my eyes. No one had ever taken care of me like the beings in this warehouse did. They didn't have any obligation to protect me. They had just taken it upon themselves to keep me safe, in spite of my worst suspicions. I had never felt like I deserved such kindness. But here I was, wrapped in their generosity like a down comforter. You go ahead and take a good, long soak. It'll make those sore muscles feel so much better. And drink your tea. All of it. I'll come in and check on you. Just make sure you don't fall asleep and drown yourself. Gee, thanks, I said. Olympia kissed me lightly on the forehead to show me she was joking. This must be what it feels like to have a big sister who loved you and looked out for you. I took off my clothes and stepped into the tub. The water was exactly the right temperature. Warm enough to soothe my aching limbs, but not so hot that it scalded my sensitive skin. The abrasions on my arms and legs had closed over, but my cells still remembered the agony of skidding across the road. I wish I could talk to Carter. He didn't like fielding all my questions, but that was too bad. I had thousands of them, but I was willing to sacrifice my curiosity on all but one. Who was he? What was he? I thought I knew, but I needed to hear him say it. The soapy water welcomed me as I sank deeper, the back of my head resting on the rim of the tub. My eyes drifted shut. My body jerked. A narcoleptic vision yanked me back to consciousness. The succubus crouched over me, blood dripping from her sharp teeth as she tried to choke me to death. Her ghoulish grin promised torments that I couldn't even imagine. Her talons ranked across my abdomen as she began to tear me open. Then Carter swooped down on the succubus. Even in my terror, I saw that his teeth were as long and as sharp as hers. Kingston refused to let me do any training the next morning. That was one command I had no trouble obeying. My body still ached whenever I moved. Even standing up from the guest bed was a painful experience. I knew I had to stay in motion to keep my muscles from locking into spasms, but that motion still had to be pretty limited. Why do I hurt so badly this morning? I moaned to Olympia. I didn't have this much pain last night. Probably all that tequila you sucked down at the bar. You can thank Jose Cuervo for numbing your pain last night. I glared at her. Ha, ha. You're never going to let me hear the end of that, are you? Nope, It's too funny. The image of sweet, innocent Georgia sitting at the bar with a butch succubus slamming tequila shots. That's going to keep me laughing for the next 500 years. I'm not that innocent, and I'm certainly not that sweet. Well, I know you're a total bitch, but you have the face of an angel. That's why you're such a great addition to the team. We'll be able to use you to lure all kinds of demonic beings out into the open. You're the perfect bait. Are you serious? Partially. We all use our human forms to entrap demons. I've been known to seduce a few incubi on more than one occasion, only to leave them disemboweled once I've had my way with them. The only thing I won't take from a demon is a demand for any kind of commitment. Olympia handed me a mug of steaming coffee and slid a plate of fresh pastries across the table. Eat something, she urged. You must be starved. I was slurping the coffee and munching happily on a bear claw when Carter walked in. I froze in mid-chew, my cheeks stuffed like a chipmunk's. Carter avoided my stare as he strolled over to the coffee pot and poured himself a mug of Olympia's black brew. It's about time you showed up, Olympia said accusingly. You've got some explaining to do to Miss Georgia. Carter lifted the mug.
I know I do. That's why I'm fortifying myself with this motor oil you call coffee. Do you mind giving us some privacy?
Olympia sniffed and tossed her blonde ringlets over her shoulder. Fine. She got up and took her time exiting the kitchen, leaving a cloud of patchouli in her wake. Her bottom twitched in her tight, low-slung jeans. I could practically see a tail swishing behind her, broadcasting her irritation at being left out of the conversation. Carter took a seat at the kitchen table. He chose a chair that was close to me, but not close enough to signal any kind of intimacy. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed. You look worse than I feel, I commented. Didn't you get much sleep last night?
None,
Carter said curtly. He swallowed his coffee, still avoiding my eyes. I slept like a baby. It wasn't until I woke up and tried to move that I started feeling like hell.
The adrenaline must have numbed you last night. You were battered beyond description.
Good thing I'm a fast healer. But I guess it takes time to recover from a rollover car crash, even for me.
Listen, Georgia.
Carter was now looking me straight in the eye.
I need to apologize for last night. I never should have left you alone. I let myself get distracted by an old flame who showed up at the bar. I tried to put her off, but she's always been pretty insistent on getting what she wants. Did she get what she wanted after the two of you left the bar? I remembered the redhead leaning over Carter, her hair hiding their faces from me. I remembered Carter's grin when she whispered something in his ear. No, not at all. She dragged me into an alley and tried to make out, but I pushed her away. For all I know, she was sent by the succubus to distract me. One thing you need to know about demons is that they can lure any supernatural creature into taking part in their agenda, as long as that creature isn't committed to good. I'm starting to realize that. I took another pastry from the plate Olympia had left behind. I was ravenous this morning. Why did you leave with her anyway? That was a huge mistake. I believed her when she told me that she had information to give me. I thought she might have some news. Something I could use to identify the demon who murdered a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. Maybe she had news, maybe not. We never got that far. I knew I had to go back and find you. You were the only thing on my mind.
Carter gave me a long look. He held his coffee cup in his hands, turning it around and around without drinking it. I knew he was trying to work up the nerve to tell me something. So, for once, I kept my mouth shut and waited. And waited. Carter cleared his throat. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "You must think I'm the dumbest twit," I cried, exasperated. "I've known what you are for weeks. I just needed you to confirm it. But you kept hiding it from me, as if I was too delicate to take the news." Carter hung his head.
You're right. I underestimated you. I thought you couldn't take another supernatural surprise on top of everything else.
With everything I've been through in the past few weeks? Are you kidding? I was almost sucked up by a soul eater. I was abducted and attacked by a succubus. My new BFF is a witch. And you're a vampire. I suspected it a long time ago. But I got all the proof I needed last night. I was lying on that stretcher, bleeding, and you stuck out your fangs at me. You were hitting on me, vampire style, while I was busted up into a million pieces. He winced.
That was an involuntary response. Yes, I wanted you. No, I didn't control my desire very well. But now I'm here to ask you to forgive me for that whole fucked up night.
So, when your fangs pop out, I assume that's the vampire equivalent of getting a hard-on?
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
Well then, I guess you were just being a typical vampire, responding to my blood instead of my boobs.
I'm only half vampire,
Carter said.
If that makes any difference to you.
I don't know if it does or not, but I'm listening. He looked so miserable that I couldn't help reaching out to touch his hand. The contact made him flinch, but he didn't take his hand away. He let me wrap my fingers over his while he told me his story.
I wasn't born Carter Black. My given name was Charles of the Shadow Clan.
Carter gave me a warning look.
I know it's a ridiculous name. Don't you dare laugh.
I wouldn't dream of laughing. I lied.
Anyway, I was born in 1950 to a vampire named Lenora. She was a torch singer, and quite the seductress. A vamp in more than one respect. She used to draw big crowds for her beauty and her voice. My father was human, but I know nothing about him. I assume he was some poor guy she picked up in one of the clubs she sang at.
Did you ever try to track him down?
Oh, yes. I spent years trying to find my human family. Lenora wouldn't tell me anything about my dad. I doubt she even knew which one of her lovers was the sperm donor. I never found out who he was. Not even a clue.
Is Lenora still alive?
Lenora is immortal, so she will live forever. I wish that I was happy that my mother has the gift of immortality, and that she passed it on to me. But I'm not. I've often wished she was dead. Not because I wish her any harm, necessarily. But I wish she wasn't always lurking in my background.
Does she ever try to get in contact with you?
No. But I'm sure she will someday. Lenora needs to have control over everyone around her. That's why I left home in the 80s and changed my name to Carter Black. If I hadn't changed my name and my identity, I'm sure she would have tracked me down, in between cocktails and one-night stands.
I mulled this over. I had suspected that Carter was a vampire ever since he sliced my breast with the iron stake and licked my blood off his finger. But hearing him admit it, and hearing about his history, made the whole thing more real and more frightening. Do you kill humans? I asked.
No. I do drink blood from living mortals, and sometimes from other vampires. But I've never drained anyone to the point of death.
But there's a first time for everything, right?
Not for that,
Carter said firmly.
That's where I draw the line. I don't kill humans. Not for blood, anyway.
Well, that's reassuring. Sort of.
It should be. Kingston is the one who made me take an oath never to kill. I've stuck to that oath ever since. He's everything to me. Father, best friend, fellow slayer. I would never go back on my word to him. He met me at one of my lowest points in my life, when I was trying like hell to destroy myself. That's one of the worst parts of being half vampire. You don't get the option to check out of life when it becomes unbearable.
Is Kingston a vampire too?
No.
Carter smiled.
Kingston is an angel. A fallen one, but an angel.
I wasn't sure if he meant that as a figure of speech. My bet was that he truly was a divine being who had gone wrong somewhere. But I didn't want to press Carter for information about his friend.
Kingston is the one who introduced me to slaying demons.
Carter went on.
Becoming a slayer changed my life. For the first time, I felt like I was contributing to the good of this world, fighting on the side of light. He trained me on how to kill demons, made me his apprentice. He taught me how to use the gifts that my vampire origins had given me, while hanging on to the best parts of my human nature. That's why I have a conscience. I owe that to Kingston.
I owed a lot to Kingston too. He was the one who had lifted me off the ground at the scene of the accident, out of the blazing fire made by the destruction of the succubus. That thing. That succubus who tried to kill me. Who was she? Carter groaned.
When I met Imogen, she was a vampire. We had a thing for a while, but it didn't last. Another succubus, a female, took over her body so she could steal her immortality. She became a dangerous hybrid of vamp and succubus, so monstrous and vindictive that she could only express her wrath by killing humans.
Is she really gone now? Couldn't she come back?
I doubt it. Not after being banished by Kingston, stabbed with iron, and burned. It takes a lot to destroy a vampire, but I think we accomplished it last night. If Imogen does come back, it will be in a very different form.
I didn't like the sound of that, or the fact that Carter had been involved with Imogen at one time. For a vampire who held such high moral principles, he was sure willing to roll in the mud when it came to women. Half human or not, Carter was a player. How do I know you're not going to hurt me? I asked. Now it was Carter's turn to take my hand. He looked into my eyes, holding my gaze. I scanned his mouth, but I didn't see any fangs jutting out. Only his lips set in a serious line.
I would never hurt you, Georgia. I would never take anything from you that you weren't willing to give me. I promise you that. You mean far too much to me.
His voice caught in his throat. I had never seen Carter so open before. So raw. He usually glossed over his feelings with a snide joke or shut down in a moody silence. Now, he was being so vulnerable with me that I almost forgot he was half vampire. Almost. The thought that I actually meant something to Carter, that he might want me for more than the powers I could contribute to the team, was scarier to me than his vampire background. Though Carter looked about 35 years old, he had been born decades before me. But even more than his chronological age, his experience intimidated me. He'd been around the block, and then some. He had killed supernatural beings, and possibly human ones. He was deeply involved in the terrifying world of demons that swirled in the skies outside my window at night.
Can you forgive me for leaving you alone last night?
He finally asked. Yes, if you can forgive me for turning our mission into such a disaster, I said. I feel like I screwed up royally.
No, you didn't. Yes, the mission turned out to be much more dangerous than I had expected, especially for you. But I don't know that we could have achieved our goal any other way.
Will you ever take me again?
Oh, yes.
Carter smiled, a slightly predatory gleam in his eye.
Anytime you'll let me.